Yeah, so it was sort of overwhelming, and I've done the complete life cycle, where I qualify it as the love, the hate, the equilibrium, then the slide, where maybe only you notice it's sliding, and then the descent, where it's sand through the fingers, and then the without. Or are you ever really without fame? Can you ever not be famous again?
In the 1980s, Justine Bateman was one of the most recognized teenagers in America. As Mallory Keaton on NBC's Family Ties, a show watched by more than 50 million people a week, she became a cultural icon almost overnight. You probably know her younger brother Jason Bateman from Arrested Development and Ozark, but back then, Justine was the bigger star. By the 90s, she'd disappeared. People thought she couldn't handle the pressure or lost her talent. The truth was far more shocking, and it wouldn't come out until she typed her own name into Google years later and discovered what Hollywood had really done to her. The family that pushed her out. When 16-year-old Justine landed the role of Mallory Keaton on a new NBC sitcom called Family Ties,
Lauren's gonna come to her senses and send him packing, then he'll be all yours again.
her family's reaction shocked her. They couldn't wait to shove her out of the house. Her dad found her an apartment. Her mom helped her pack. Her brother Jason started making architectural plans for what he'd do with her bedroom. Most 16-year-olds have to beg to stay out past curfew. Justine's parents were practically throwing her belongings onto the curb. Why? Because they'd already figured out that managing their kids' careers made them more money than actually working themselves. Justine Tanya Bateman was born on February 19, 1966, in Rye, New York. Her father, Kent, worked as a film director and producer. Her mother, Victoria Elizabeth, had been a Pan Am flight attendant from Malta who grew up bouncing between Birmingham and Shrewsbury in the United Kingdom. The Batemans looked like a typical showbiz family from the outside, but something darker ran underneath.
It starts, when I talked about, the types of realities that people have as foundational.
When Justine's younger brother Jason landed a role on Little House on the Prairie at 12 years old, Kent and Victoria discovered something remarkable. They made more money managing their kids' careers than they ever did working themselves. Jason later admitted on Conan O'Brien's podcast that this created a peer relationship with their parents rather than a traditional parent-child dynamic. Translation: the parents treated their famous kids like business partners instead of children. 55 million witnesses to a breakdown. Family Ties premiered on September 22, 1982, and exploded into a cultural phenomenon. At its peak, 55 million people watched every single week. That number is almost incomprehensible today.
This is the one that counts. Hey, short stuff.
The biggest hit shows now barely crack 9 million viewers. With only 3 major networks and no internet to fragment audiences, fame in the 80s meant you couldn't walk down a street without being recognized. Justine earned 2 Emmy nominations in 1986 and 1987, plus a Golden Globe nod in 1986. Critics loved her. America loved her. Michael J. Fox, who played her on-screen brother Alex, later told Emmy TV legends that Justine was amazing, fantastic, and tremendously talented.
Hey, this is really scary.
He noticed that after the show became huge, teenage girls named Mallory and Justine started popping up everywhere. Those names hadn't been part of the American lexicon before Family Ties. Behind the scenes, 16-year-old Justine was slowly dying. The constant scrutiny of her appearance triggered eating disorders that would plague her for the next decade. She developed anorexia, bulimia, and compulsive overeating all at once. She would run from the set between takes to vomit in the bathroom. Nobody noticed.
It has like smooth skin and all this, but I just think this is so much more interesting. Like if you see my face, you know what you're gonna get.
For 10 years, while 55 million people watched her play the lovable Mallory, she was destroying herself in secret. The prison disguised as a hit show. During the show's run, something happened that enraged Justine. Her character, Mallory, went to college on screen. Justine desperately wanted to do the same in real life. She asked the writing staff for college recommendation letters, and they gladly obliged. She started researching schools.
What do you mean, man?
I'm saying things that would not normally come out of my mouth.
Then, line producer Carol Himes sat her down in her dressing room. When Justine confirmed she was thinking about college, Himes delivered crushing news. "Well, honey, you can't go. You're under contract to Paramount Studios." Justine tried to negotiate becoming a semi-regular cast member so she could attend some classes. The answer was no. Paramount owned her time completely. She had to watch her character get educated on television while being denied the same opportunity herself. The irony wasn't lost on her. She was 17 years old, playing a teenager who got to pursue dreams while she herself was trapped. That moment planted seeds of resentment that would grow for 25 years. The SNL disaster nobody talks about. In February 1988, during Saturday Night Live's 13th season, Justine hosted the show. It should have been a career highlight. Instead, it became brutal evidence that her fame came from playing one specific character really well, not from having broad comedic talent. Critics savaged her performance.
Nick, I think you've been taking the sorority stuff a little too seriously.
Oh, really?
The episode bombed so badly that it should have been a warning sign about what would happen when family ties ended, and Justine couldn't hide behind Mallory Keaton anymore. But nobody was paying attention to warning signs. Everyone assumed her success would last forever. When Julia Roberts was her background extra. In 1988, fresh off her SNL failure, Justine starred in Satisfaction, a movie about an all-girl rock band. NBC produced it specifically as a vehicle for Justine, who is still the star of their hit show. Aaron Spelling backed the project. Liam Neeson signed on as the love interest. And in the background, playing the bass guitarist who gets engaged to her high school sweetheart, was a 19-year-old actress in her first credited film role, Julia Roberts. Let that sink in for a second. There was a brief, shining moment in Hollywood history when Justine Bateman was a bigger star than Julia Roberts. The film is actual proof of that fleeting window. Within 2 years, Julia would star in Pretty Woman and become one of the biggest movie stars on the planet.
Please welcome Justine Bateman.
Justine's film career would fizzle out almost immediately. The movie tanked. Critics called it dull and cliché-ridden. Jason Bateman, who was starring in the sitcom Valerie's Family at the time and had just made his feature film debut in Teen Wolf 2, tried to support his sister. He told the press he admired her courage to stand up there and sing, then joked, "You can bet her movie is going to do better than my Teen Wolf 2. He was wrong. Both movies bombed.
I love my husband. Even if I know I wouldn't just give my ring away.
10 years in hell while America watched. For the entire 7-season run of Family Ties, plus 3 more years, Justine lived in a private hell of eating disorders. She binged, purged, starved herself, and repeated the cycle endlessly. The binging and purging felt normal to her because she'd never known anything different as a famous teenager. The industry praised her beauty while she privately despised what she saw in the mirror. Then, in the early 1990s, a friend said something that changed everything. They gently suggested that what Justine was doing with food looked a lot like alcoholism or drug addiction. At first, Justine resisted the comparison. How could her eating habits be the same as someone shooting heroin? But she couldn't unthink what her friend had said. She entered a 12-step program. The process forced her to admit she was powerless over her compulsion with food. She had to take inventory of all the damage she'd caused. Most importantly, she had to find a higher power. That's when Justine gave her life to Jesus Christ. She later said she found the highest high by hitting the lowest low. Through the 12-step program and her Christian faith, Justine finally started healing. She became the person she always wanted to become, just not in the way she thought it would happen. Her recovery gave her clarity about what mattered and what didn't. Unfortunately, being honest about your struggles and finding Jesus wasn't exactly career-boosting in Hollywood. The love triangle that kicked out a teen idol. While recovering from her eating disorders in the late 80s, Justine's dating life became tabloid fodder. She dated sound mixer Bobby Anderson after meeting him on the set of Tales from the Dark Side in 1984. Then she started seeing actor Scott McGinnis around 1987. Things got messy fast. McGinnis lived with his housemate, teen idol Leif Garrett. Justine left McGinnis for Garrett. McGinnis promptly kicked Garrett out of their shared house. Garrett started spending all his time at Justine's Hollywood Hills home. The relationship with Garrett lasted from around 1987 to somewhere in the early 1990s, depending on which source you believe. When Entertainment Weekly asked her about him years later, she said he was a great guy, but she had no idea what happened to him. The relationship apparently ended suddenly with no explanation. She also briefly dated punk rock legend Billy Idol at some point in the 80s. Years later, she commented that he was really very polite, contradicting his outrageous bad boy image. She was photographed looking affectionate with MacGyver star Richard Dean Anderson at several events in the early 90s, though that may have just been friendship. None of these relationships led to marriage. None of them lasted. Justine was still trying to figure out who she was beyond Mallory Keaton. Hollywood's ultimatum: surgery or get out. After Family Ties ended in 1989, Justine kept working, but the roles got smaller and less frequent.
Listen, if Martin's not here, maybe I'll just leave.
Yeah, maybe you should.
You were right, Bibbs.
She appeared in Men Behaving Badly opposite Rob Schneider, which lasted one season in 1996.
Thank God we're here. I can't wait to lie down.
I hear you. And what a day.
During that show's run, she did something brave that turned out to be career suicide. She revealed publicly for the first time that she'd battled eating disorders for a decade. She told the press she'd been in recovery and found a relationship with God.
Hey guys, it's Wake Up and Get Real with Kelly Catron and Justine Bateman. Today I'm going to talk about God.
The revelation should have been celebrated. Instead, it became a liability. Actresses weren't supposed to admit weakness. They weren't supposed to talk about faith. They especially weren't supposed to age naturally.
Well, when you say, is there beauty in aging, aren't you really saying, do you think it's possible for other people to find aging beautiful?
After Men Behaving Badly ended in 1997, the offers slowed to a trickle. By the mid-90s, Hollywood made its position crystal clear. Her agents told her that if she wanted to keep getting roles, she needed to surgically alter her face. They weren't subtle. They didn't suggest she think about it someday. They told her point blank that her career depended on going under the knife. Justine met with 3 plastic surgeons in Beverly Hills. She sat through consultations where they marked up her face like a renovation project.
I went to a plastic surgeon for the cover of the book. He said, you're a candidate for the works. Cut in on the eyes and take these bags away. And then
One surgeon suggested cutting in on her eyes to create an almond shape, taking away the bags, removing extra skin from her face, doing a brow lift, possibly more. He told her she was a candidate for the works. For her book called Face, written years later, she used a photo of one of those marked-up consultations as the cover image. But Justine didn't get the surgery. She walked away from all 3 surgeons, and by walking away, she effectively ended her mainstream acting career. The roles dried up almost completely. Her agents started pushing her toward reality TV or hosting gigs. The message was clear. If she wasn't going to play the game, Hollywood had no use for her. The fashion designer who quit Hollywood. By 2000, Justine had grown tired of waiting for the phone to ring. She did something radical. She let her Screen Actors Guild card lapse, which basically means she officially gave up her union membership and her legal right to work as a professional actor in Hollywood.
I'm waiting.
I'm thinking.
I'm leaving.
You got it?
One more thing.
She called her manager and told them she wasn't acting anymore. She meant it. She genuinely believed her acting career was over. She founded Justine Bateman Designs, a clothing company specializing in one-of-a-kind hand knits. The business sold to Saks Fifth Avenue, Bendel's in New York, and Fred Siegel. For 3 years, she poured herself into fashion design without having to perform for cameras or worry about her appearance. The business was successful enough, but it wasn't her passion. By 2003, she closed it down. But the experience taught her something crucial. She could survive without Hollywood's approval. In 2001, Justine married Mark Fluent, a real estate developer who worked for Deutsche Bank. Together, they had 2 children. Their daughter Gianetta and their son Duke Kenneth Fluent arrived in June 2004. Mark provided Justine with stability and a home life that wasn't connected to Hollywood's constant judgment. For the first time in her life, she wasn't famous. Justine Bateman. She was just Justine. The 46-year-old freshman who cried in her car. In fall 2012, at 46 years old, Justine did something nobody expected. She enrolled as a freshman at UCLA to study computer science and digital media management. People thought she'd lost her mind. Why would a famous actress go back to school for one of the hardest majors available? Justine had a clear vision. For years, she'd pitched ideas for digital entertainment projects that combined technology and storytelling. Industry executives kept telling her she was 4 years ahead. The technology didn't exist yet. The audience wasn't ready. Come back later. She heard that line so many times it made her want to scream. She had the script. She had the distribution plan. She had people ready to work. The only thing missing was funding. nobody would give it to her. So she decided to learn how to build the future herself. The adjustment to college life at 46 proved brutal. She felt like she was drowning in that first computer science class. She cried in her car after getting exams back, holding it together just long enough to reach the parking structure before losing it. She made UCLA her full-time job, showing up on campus every weekday, whether she had classes or not. She later admitted she was not gifted at coding the way she was gifted as a writer and director. She had to work her butt off for every good grade. Nothing came easy. In June 2016, Justine graduated from UCLA with her bachelor's degree at 50 years old.
I just graduated from UCLA in 2016, and so my first effort at this was an academic version.
She'd proven to herself and the world that it was never too late to completely reinvent yourself. The Google search that broke her. Sometime around 2010 or 2011, when Justine was working on her first book about fame, she needed to research something from her famous years. She opened Google and typed in her own name. The autocomplete suggestion stopped her cold. Justine Bateman looks old. She stared at the screen. She was only 41 years old at the time. She clicked through and found forums filled with strangers dissecting every line on her face. They posted photos as evidence of her aging. They suggested procedures she should get. They debated whether she'd let herself go or if she just looked tired. The viciousness of the comments shocked her. At first, Justine tried to see what they were talking about. She looked at the photos they'd posted. She couldn't understand their problem. She looked like a woman in her early 40s who'd lived a full life, but the comments pushed buttons in her she didn't know existed. She felt herself starting to wonder if they were right, and she was wrong. There were so many of them and only one of her. Maybe they knew something she didn't. Maybe she needed to do something about her face. That thinking messed with her head for months. Then she snapped out of it. She realized what was happening. These people didn't know her. They were projecting their own fears onto her face. She started researching. She interviewed about 20 famous people about their experiences with fame and aging. She looked into the psychology behind why society treats women's aging faces as broken.
For a very small subset of people, fame becomes a component in the foundation of your reality.
The Union Board explosion. In 2009, Justine caused a massive controversy that showed a side of her fans never saw on Family Ties.
There's a picture of me. Didn't I get a break? I fixed myself a cup of Maxwell House Instant.
She resigned from the Screen Actors Guild National Board in vehement protest just before the end of her initial 3-year term. She'd been elected to the board in 2006 to fix 3 major problems: the almost non-functioning website, poor agent relations, and the blurry jurisdictional lines between SAG and AFTRA. She resigned in protest of a newly signed contract between SAG and AFTRA that she believed would force 50% of working members to leave the business. Her resignation letter became legendary for its no-holds-barred language.
As much as to make sure that we have made a deal that protects us.
She called AFTRA a scumbag organization and said SAG should have bought them years ago and shut that duplicitous leadership up. She compared SAG leadership gagging elected officials to communist China or tumultuous Iran. She wrote that she could not be part of a union leadership that strips its elected leadership of its voice. This was a woman who'd been pushed around by Hollywood for too long. The books. In 2018, Justine published Fame: The Hijacking of Reality. The book explored experiencing fame from the inside, breaking down the life cycle into distinct phases: the love to hate, the equilibrium, the slide, the descent, and the without. She wrote about how fame becomes woven into the foundation of a person's identity, how it affects self-esteem, ego, social standing, work opportunities.
And then it comes down, you still have this thing here, but the frenzy was caused by the fame. Best it's ever been, and that's why people are reacting.
Right.
How when fame starts pulling away, it tears all those things away too. 3 years later, in 2021, she published Face 1 Square Foot of Skin. This book was about society's assumption that women's faces are broken as they age and need to be fixed.
I hope that for all women, that they could just look into what's making them think they need to change this 1 square foot of skin.
The cover showed her face marked up by a plastic surgeon with all the recommended procedures. Inside, she wrote fictional stories about women of different ages coping with beauty standards. She also included her own journey processing that Google search. The book asked uncomfortable questions. Why do we have these anchors in society that women's faces need to be changed? How did we get to a point where cutting your face up or injecting it with plastic is spoken about so matter-of-factly? The books hit a nerve. Women started reaching out by the thousands. They told her they'd wasted years worrying about wrinkles when they could have been living.
If I have a face like this, if I just look 23, it'd take me a few minutes to go, she's in charge?
The AI battle that made her a target. In May 2023, when the Writers Guild launched a strike that would last 148 days, Justine became one of the most prominent voices warning about artificial intelligence. She posted a Twitter thread that garnered massive attention. She explained that AI had to be addressed now or never, because this was the last time any labor action would be effective in show business. She warned that if strong rules weren't established immediately, studios wouldn't even notice if unions struck in 3 years. When SAG-AFTRA joined the strike in July, they asked Justine to serve as their AI consultant on the negotiating committee.
I wanted to look at what that ephemeral mist was that sort of comes in a room, like if Brad Pitt walked in right now, everything would stop.
She was back in those rooms again, fighting for workers' rights. The studio's position horrified her. They wanted to scan background actors once, pay them for a single day, then use their digital likeness forever without additional compensation. They wanted to feed all the old performances from past actors into AI systems. Charlie Chaplin, Alfred Hitchcock, every actor who'd ever lived. Justine called it psychopathic. She warned that if actors agreed to these terms, they were handing the studios the keys to the house. When SAG-AFTRA reached a tentative agreement with studios on November 8, 2023, Justine was furious. She went on MSNBC and told actors they should only approve the deal if they didn't want to work anymore.
There's a page on that site labeled AI in film.
She criticized the agreement for not including language-defining performers of human characters as human. The Writers Guild got that language. The Directors Guild got it. SAG-AFTRA didn't. Despite her opposition, the contract was ratified by 86% of the union board. She founded Credo 23, an organization that creates a certification stamp for films made entirely without generative AI. In March 2025, the Credo 23 Film Festival held its inaugural event, premiering 2 of Justine's new feature films, The Political Firestorm That Divided a Nation. 3 days after Donald Trump won the 2024 election, Justine posted something on Twitter that catapulted her into the political muck. She wrote that she was decompressing from walking on eggshells for the past 4 years. She continued that common sense was discarded, intellectual discussion was demonized, complete intolerance became almost a religion, and one's professional and social life was threatened almost constantly. The tweet storm went viral. Her followers more than doubled overnight. In December 2024, The Hollywood Reporter falsely claimed Justine was a well-known supporter of Trump. She forced them to retract the claim 5 hours later, calling it wildly unacceptable and tabloid level. Media outlets started speculating about tension between Justine and her brother Jason because of their differing political views.
40 years later, and Jason Bateman is making rare comments on where his relationship with sister Justine stands today.
Jason had appeared on a podcast in June 2024, saying he was addicted to the Trump show and couldn't stop watching.
There was a very special cameo by a guy who looks a lot like Donald Trump.
Can I show the clip? We'll show the clip. This is what happened.
He joked about how tragic it was that the people least equipped to bear what the Trump administration would yield were a lot of the folks who voted for him. In September 2024, Justine had enough. She posted on Twitter that anyone bringing up my brother to me for any other reason than to say you like his new upcoming show or any of his past work will be muted at best and blocked at worst. Jason later told Esquire in December 2024 that he and Justine don't see each other much. They hang out and they're nice to each other because they respect one another as individuals, regardless of the blood thing. The disaster tourists controversy. In January 2025, devastating wildfires swept through Southern California.
Firefighters in Southern California have their hands full right now. They are battling a series of blazes.
At least 24 people died. Over 10,000 structures were destroyed.
The flames scorched more than 100 square miles and drove tens of thousands from their homes.
On Friday, January 10th, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle traveled from their Montecito home to Pasadena to visit fire victims. They handed out food parcels at the Pasadena Convention Center. They spoke with survivors. They donated clothing and essential supplies through their Archewell Foundation.
Harry and Meghan are trying to give them and parents like them in association with the couple's charitable Archewell Foundation.
On Saturday, January 11th, Justine wrote that Meghan Markle and Harry are no better than ambulance chasers. What a repulsive photo op they achieved. They are touring the damage? Are they politicians now? They don't live here, they are tourists. Disaster tourists. The post went viral immediately. It was viewed 1.8 million times and liked 33,000 times. In March 2025, she wrote a Substack post titled, "The Problem with Meghan Markle. It's not what she's doing. It's the Victim Olympics road she took to get there." She wrote that the problem with Meghan Markle and her husband Harry is that every opportunity they have explored or exploited over the past few years has been due to their very aggressive Victim Olympics campaign. The difference between doing that 2 years ago and doing it now is immense. It's 2025 and no one wants to see victims anymore. The woman who refused to vanish. As of 2025, Justine Bateman's net worth sits at $6 million. That might seem low for someone who starred in one of the biggest sitcoms of the 80s. Make sure to click on the videos on the screen now.